Speaking of the importance of the Old Testament, one of my favorite Old Testament books is Ecclesiastes. I think one of the most neglected books of the Old Testament is the Song of Songs. You mentioned earlier that you take the three-person view. Could you just say a little to our audience about what the three-person view is and how it differentiates maybe from the two-person view?
Sure.
And also, I'd love to talk about Ecclesiastes
Sure.
and get your take on that as well. So kind of two loaded questions there.
Well, the two-person view is the predominant view. Solomon and Shulamit is her name, but here's the problem. If we're going to come away from the Song of Solomon saying it is teaching on the purity of married love, and to rescue it from it just being an X-rated book, we've got to say it is talking about true love and the examples of true love. Okay, but then I look at Solomon, and even within the book itself, he has reached hundreds of wives and concubines. It says that in chapter 8. Well, where is the purity of married love? So I suggest that there's a third character. He's not given a name, but he's given an occupation. He's called the shepherd in chapter 1. And I think he's the true love of Shulamit. And who is Solomon? Well, I must say he's the bad guy. He's the bad guy who is coming along and saying, come down to my Jerusalem. You can be part of my harem. And guess what? Listen to the girls here, the daughters of Jerusalem, as they cry out, oh, he's wonderful, he's wonderful, he's wonderful. They're part of his harem, and they're trying to convince her to join them. And she doesn't. She remains firm in her loyalty of her love. And so when we get to chapter 8, we see them reunited, and they live happily ever after. I think when you understand that love has been tested and it has survived, the reality, the true love has survived, it adds a little bit octane to that statement. Love is a fire. It's a fire of Yahweh, and many waters cannot quench that fire. She's gone through the waters trying to quench that love of her for her beloved, and she survived because she remained faithful. And many waters cannot quench love, nor can the floods drown it. Now listen, if a man were to give all of his possessions for love, it would be condemned. I mean, here's a man with all of his possessions trying to buy her love. No. Right. Who's the singer? Can't buy me love.
The Beatles.
Yeah.
How can you forget the
Beatles?
Beatles?
It was an African-American gal. Who was it? Can't buy me love.
I'm thinking of the old Beatles song.
Oh, maybe it was. Maybe it was both.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
we've never seen them together, the African-American singer and the Beatles. Maybe they're the same person.
Go. Yeah, okay. So you can't buy me love. Oh, it was the Beatles. You're right.
Thank you.
Yeah. So no, Solomon, you can't buy my love. You can't buy it. But I'm going to be faithful to my shepherd love.
So why should someone in our church, why should they read Song of Songs?
Yeah. Well, contrary to what a unnamed pastor from a few years ago argued that it's a sex manual. We won't mention that.
That would be Mark Driscoll. I'll say it.
It's not a sex manual. It does have some intimate descriptions. But compared to the X-rated stuff that you read today, even by Christians, it's mild.
Yeah.
But these are the purity of love between a husband and wife are described there. But it's not just a sex manual. It's describing what true love is all about, and if true love is going to stand the test of a trial, of her being drawn away. To me, that shows the power of married love. So, no, I think it is. The why, and I'm not the first one to say this, the intimate details that are described in the Song of Solomon are married, a married couple. But she's reflecting on him, he's reflecting on her, and she's saying, you, buddy, Shlomo, cannot buy my love. I'm going to be faithful to my. Now, is there a spiritual message here? Well, wow, you talk about allegory. Allegory. The Christian allegorists in the Middle Ages, what do we
Go
do?
to town with this one.
Yeah.
What do we do
Yeah.
with this book? He lies between my breasts. What do we do? I mean, these are monks and single guys in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
They're
Which makes it
saying,
even weirder if we're going to say that's the church and Jesus. I mean,
yeah.
that's
Well,
just
well,
even
what it is
creepy.
Jesus is here, and one breast is the Old Testament, and the other breast is the New Testament.
Right.
So
That we
Jesus,
dodged that bullet. Yeah.
wow, Jesus connects the old and
Well,
the
when
new.
you make marriage a sacrament, you gotta start doing stuff
Well,
like
that's
that.
true. That's true. So some of those medieval scholars, or most of them were single monks, allegorized it all. Okay. Well, we don't have to allegorize it to see. Okay, shepherd. Wow. That's amazing that the true love is the shepherd, and our Lord Jesus is the shepherd. My bride. Well, in the New Testament, the church is the bride of Christ. So there is, I think, a general typical message to the book without going into all of the details of making it so many types, that Jesus is our shepherd, we are the bride, and there is a world out there that's trying to lure us away from our shepherd.
So maybe not allegorical interpretation,
Right.
but you would say that there could be a comparison there.
Yes,
Yeah.
a typical, without going into the extremes of allegory. Yeah.
Great. I'm sorry, Chris. I don't know if you had a question, but I'd love to hear a little bit about Ecclesiastes as well. One of my favorite books.
That's my favorite Old Testament book too. My first 2 Bible studies I ever taught on my own was James. After the seminar that I first saw you went, right, and that inspired for me teaching a Bible study on James. And the next one was Ecclesiastes. Chris, you were a part. This was years ago.
I still have my notes from both the James studies.
And Ecclesiastes afterwards. So I'm with you, Ryan. This is my favorite Old Testament book also.
Well, my approach to it is not maybe as a radical approach as my approach to the Song of Songs, but oftentimes I use this in preaching, that the key to a house is sometimes hanging near the back door. Whether that's wise or not isn't the issue. But oftentimes at the end of an Old Testament book, there is a key near the back door of the book that can help us to understand the book, like Song of Solomon 8, 6, and 7. Well, the last thing that, and I do believe it's Solomon writing this in his old age, says the words of the wise are like goads and are like nails fixed by a master builder. If he's comparing what he said to goads and nails, perhaps we should look at that and some of these problematic, almost like secular statements in the book that Solomon is stating, perhaps those are intended to be goads that prod us on. A goad is, prods you on.
I'm glad we got that on camera. Our special guest just physically assaulted me.
Yeah, right. So
It's about time somebody did.
Right.
Yeah.
I deserve
So
it.
the goad sort of like goads us on, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Keep reading, and you'll get to a nail. Actually, Elohim is a God is mentioned 40 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. This is not a secular book. 40 times. And so if you're reading this and it sounds like he's secular-minded and worldly-minded and everything, just keep reading. He's going to get to a nail. And that nail is where God is mentioned. And remember your Creator in the days of your youth. What a wonderful statement there. But if you read the previous part of that, it's like, life is meaningless like him. But remember God, in your youth. And so read the secular passages or the doubting passages as goads, but then get to a nail. And that'll secure it. And of course, he ends with a nail, doesn't he?
Yep.
fear God and keep His
right.
commandments, for this
The
is the whole of man.
duty of life. Yeah, whole of man.
So that's my approach to it. I don't think it rescues the book. I'm not saying nobody's understood it until I said this. I just see it as a
Ryan
key,
now understands it since you said it.
a key on the back door to use to unlock some of those secular, pessimistic passages. But wow, fear God and keep His commandments.